Gaenor katoa, namihi jan, no vera aho, ko preseli te monga, ko cleddau te awa, ko Gaenor Stoate tapu inga. My Welsh mountain range and my river connect me to my old home and to my new home in Taranaki. River and mountain have allowed me to acknowledge the importance of the land in shaping my story and the way I feel I can fit, belong here, and how I can wear my research as an insider and not an outsider. My PhD sits at the intersection of citizenship and applied theatre. Am I in or am I out? We saw in the directions for actually coming to looking at our presentations here, we mentioned, you would have seen Peter mention something called kai ariki. And I have wondered about what our kai ariki might be in terms of the guiding principles behind creating ensemble work with participants. And also, what is our kai ariki for devising? So I'm interpreting the tyranny of distance and the need for a guide, kai ariki, as the space here between us, the gaps in our understanding of each other, and the way that these gaps might be seen as oppressive acts within the devised theatre performance ensemble. I want to consider how a group making devised theatre for experience or performance overcomes the space between them. And I ask this question: can diverse feelings of belonging have an impact on the creative work? And I also ask why an ensemble might even need to narrow the space in the first place, and what we actually mean by space in this.
I'm going to ask you to just pause one moment so people can get seats.
I'm so sorry.
We're glad you're here. You're lost. Thank you so much.
I'll just go back over that if that's okay.
Maybe just the question.
Yeah.
Yes, wonderful.
So I'm just, at the moment, I'm looking at devising a devised theatre ensemble, but I'm also looking at this notion of how the ensemble is actually addressing or mitigating the gaps between the members of the ensembles. And I ask these four questions. Can diverse feelings of belonging have an impact on the creative work? Can the creative work have an impact on notions of belonging? Why might an ensemble need to narrow the space or reduce the gaps in the first place? And is maintaining that affective distance important? And if it is, who is it important to? What do we mean by space? And I'll talk about that in a moment, but the vital thing for me is to actually consider the difference in spaces and the way that we're defining that sort of like as participants, but also as kind of different focuses and different ways of working with devised work. And of course, as I was saying before, who is our hierarchy for helping ensemble to work effectively towards making devised theatre performance or facilitating devised theatre experiences? The problem that I'm having is that I am conscious as a secondary drama teacher and a tertiary theatre lecturer that I am constantly framing people. And I'm told that it's, we're very good at repositioning ourselves, but I am conscious of the frames that I position myself in and position others. And I'm finding that ensemble as a notion is going to actually need some careful thinking, because putting participants in the ensemble frame as volunteers, are we looking at it in terms of this particular quote? You know, just because we have been put into this performance ensemble as participants, we put our hands up to it. What does that actually mean for us? And who is it that's looking at us and is actually making that judgment? How are we imposing a relationship? So that's what I mean about asking about the cap. So
we should pause again so you all can come over here and get seats. But you don't need to go back.
No, that's fine.
Anyone want to come over here and get a chair, please feel free. If there are, yes, there are more chairs. But I understand we can't sit on tables that way. I'm not going to offer that. Okay,
So I'm conscious that I am potentially creating an oppressive frame, just by my position. And I do feel that there's a need, as we heard in the panel this morning, that there's a need to deconstruct myself first. I need to know how I fit in, because this belonging is not just me looking at it with the participants. So I need to be taking a critical stance, and I'm looking at that whole question of who's looking at who's in, who's out, who are the people making the judgments. And I'm concerned about judgments being made about ensemble participants, because in my tertiary capacity, I'm actually judging people on whether or not they made a good crack at Theatre 101 by participating in that ensemble. So there's some problematic things here. So I'm looking around at that sort of like, who gives good ensemble? I think it's a slippery concept, and I think it's important for New Zealand to be considering this as well, so the work that we're doing here. So the initial title that I had for this was very broad, and it is now narrowed to activating belonging, and I'm asking that question really. I wanted to know, however, what theatre practitioners, teachers and students said about a devising process. And so I interviewed 8 participants. And these interviews have given me some important stages, pardon the pun, on which I can actually move forward to stage 2 of the research, which will be self-explanatory in a moment. So I started with a hunch that drama learning communities might share some of the pressures and challenges with local communities, aspects like belonging, how we're feeling. Wanted to understand how groups function in both contexts. What are the dynamics of the drama group, for example, that can be understood in terms of belonging? So findings from the interviews include discussion of how the group or the ensemble was a living and developing process, or in some instances was described by an actor, for instance, as it was a finalized product. So we were looking there at that notion of, is it a verb or is it a noun? The company Skin had a great deal to say about the way that ensemble developed as a result of the devising, as opposed to their text-based experiences, and the sharing of personal stories both from the ensemble and locally contextualized audience communities. There was lengthy discussion about the content from Skin as well, and from the NCEA moderator, which is our New Zealand assessment facility. And what seemed to emerge from the rest of the interview participants was how this question, and indeed if, ensembles collaborated, and whether or not this impacted on the success of the devised work, which was one of the questions I asked in the beginning. The first stage has given me an opportunity to further develop my reflexive stance, and I'm conscious that I continue to position myself in an advocacy role for increased applied theatre and drama opportunities in secondary and tertiary educational contexts, and I'm conscious again of the fact that we mentioned this morning it's very important to be transparent about that. I do have an agenda, and I'm happy with it. I'm happy with my agenda, but what I'm not happy with is the way that I might introduce it with the ensemble and the participants I'll be working with. So just clarifying what I mean by space, physical space, the architecture, I think that's going to have an impact on the way that we're going to be working. The studio, the buildings, the institution, the kind of critical literacy, if you like, of reading our buildings. Digital space is important. There's a lovely study by Babel in 2011 that looked at the ensemble building that went on after the ensemble had sort of finished. They were still kind of meeting each other online. And then those conceptual spaces like emotions, collaboration, acting as an individual in the ensemble, thinking about sharing the moving and thinking space. And that's where I look to Britain for that information. So part of the data capture now from the interviews, I'll just let you read that. I thought it was quite interesting coming from teachers and coming from how we actually sort of mitigate that gap between we are individuals mostly, and we're still privileging that, I would maintain, that kind of individual success. And then we've got to work in a group. So how do we facilitate this border crossing for ourselves as teachers, facilitators, directors, and so forth? All right, let me know when I don't want to. So the company were quite interesting. I'm sorry. This is started off life as a women's company down in Palmerston North, and they finally let men in last year. They say trust is really important, because devising, sometimes you have to be a total idiot. You have to put yourself out. I mean, all us girls are talking, and then Toby wants to say something. Have the guts. You've got to feel comfortable to be able to go, actually, I don't agree with that. Or, actually, it's quite different from my perspective. If we didn't have that voice, the play would not have been as rich. The work won't be as good if you don't have that variety in your ensemble. So there's lovely kind of argument there for polyphony. And a question about those gaps. So I recently asked this company about their process, and they said that although their work was based on stories from individual experiences, their focus on the community or the place where the stories had been experienced was the glue. What they felt connected their audiences to their work was not so much through the roles being played out on stage, but rather the rough ground itself, which the audience recognised, and on which they walked together. The unstable platform of lived out lives. So this is where I'm moving on to now. So I'm exactly, according to my supervisor, I'm halfway through, which is a bit terrifying. It's like the glass half empty, half full kind of thing. I feel like I've just started. She's saying, yeah, right in the middle now, so yeah, well established. That's a bit terrifying. So basically, what's going to happen in the methodology of stage 2, or the method, should we say, so we're going to, I have already recruited 6 participants, volunteers. They are, some have some very past experience in drama in schools. Some have degrees in performance. Some have never done anything at all, and that's not important to me. I'm working in New Plymouth, which was a big decision for me, whether I worked in a centre which was kind of like thriving artistically. We are not thriving artistically. We are a very parochial place. And I feel that what we're up against is the operatic company, the amateur work that goes on where product is privileged hugely, where the ensemble is not privileged at all in any capacity, in any definition. I feel there are stars in that constellation, and they're usually taken from the powerful voices, the educated, the white. And I'm interested in looking to see, because I didn't feel that I belonged in New Plymouth. I've been here since 2004 in New Zealand. I've only just started to feel like I can come home. And so thank you, Jan, for what you said about returning home, because now I can actually call New Plymouth my home, because I know that this work that I'm going to be doing is going to be affecting me as well. I know that will be true. I'm very happy to talk about the methodology in present, but basically the 3 things that we're going to do is we're going to use image theatre, forum theatre, and newspaper theatre. But what I want to do is to use a blend of Hallie Flanagan's Federal Theatre Project, the newspaper context that she set up there, but using Boal's 10 ways of playing with local news, so that we have something that is a story that hasn't come from me, hasn't actually come from one powerful participant of the ensemble, which is one of the things that I'm sort of slightly nervous about, but instead is situated in place in New Plymouth. And this one here. So it's 5 minutes.
It's the end.
It's the end.
If you make your final sentence.
Yep, final sentence, just wanting to ask the question really, Can we, instead of having Britain's work on ensemble, which is psychophysical training and still for the actor, I'm not interested in training actors. I'm interested in looking to see whether local work made by non-professionals can actually have any impact on the way that we feel ourselves located in a space, and that we have a right to a voice, and that we are working in that beautiful aspect of the stage to do it.
Thank you.